Alright, yo, it's your boy Zxous, and we are back here with another Nikke related video. Now, we have the E review and guide, which I am a bit curious for because obviously I don't know how Pride One is going to rank this one, right? I do think Eve is a very powerful character, but unfortunately, the competitors she has in terms of on the main team where she is going to be used probably the most is you probably will push her ranking down. That's what I'm gonna assume, right? Like Rappy and Red Hood's value is probably gonna push her rankings down. But we're gonna take a look and see. So let's go to original tier list first and see where she is. I want to go to bossing first because that's what I'm most curious about. So here's bossing, not in triple S tier, which Mihara is, so that says a lot. Not in double S tier. Okay. Oh. Okay. So A in low deficit, B in high deficit, S in bossing, and C in PvP. Now, let's take a look. I feel like the reasoning behind this is going to be Rappy and Red Hood, right? That's what I'm going to guess. Let's take a look and see the actual pros and cons before we look at anything else, right? Decent DPS for iron bossing content. I mean, I would say she's a decent DPS, but then it's like she's top 3. You get what I'm saying? Like, we could sit there and say she's a decent DPS, but the only DPSs that are stronger than her that are iron is Red Hood and Rappy. Nobody else here is stronger than her. Maybe Raven might be, I'm not sure, but nobody else is stronger than her DPS wise. So she is definitely a top 3 iron DPS character, in my opinion, obviously. So yeah. Provides damage taken debuff against iron weak enemies, which is essentially a team-wide damage buff. Yeah, so that's a great thing, but again, it only works to iron weak enemies, so electrical enemies. Possesses innate attack buffs, great. Has self ammo refund against iron weak enemies, reducing the need for ammo capacity overload drastically, great. Sure. Less pressure on reaching 12-12 overload line, as she has multiple lines that work well on her because of her crit based DPS. Sure. The juiciest shooting pose in game, period. Okay, great. If you take a look at her cons here, base crit rate is only 75%, which introduces a bunch of problems, right? Infrequent crit procs due to the crit rate not being 100% can lead to mauled sessions in raid and certain teams, and reduce her skill one frequently of activation. Sure. Team building is restricted due to the need for crit rate, which I wouldn't really say I wouldn't say team building is necessarily restricted, but it's like, as you guys know, I feel like the hardest this character has ever hit was on the Monstrous Trio team, right? The only thing is I'm never using, outside of me doing a video for this character with Crown, Little Mermaid, and Helm, I am never, and I mean this, never using Eve with them outside of a video, right? Like the video idea, I'm not using her outside of that. So I would say she is technically restricted to a team for herself that isn't like content based in general, because realistically the only team you're going to be using with her, if you are using her, is Master and Anchor, right? Just because that you're not going to get rid of that permanent 20% crit rate buff that's going to help this character drastically, not to mention all the attack damage buffs and attack buffs and reload speed buffs that you get from that team, right? So it is what it is. S1 procs are too low in numbers to make her meta in campaign, since that's her source of AoE. Yeah, I would say so. Compared to other iron DPSs, she is only a top tier iron DPS when a weak iron boss has no parts, since almost all other iron DPS skills with parts. Okay, comparatively, Stellar Blade protagonist Eve is mid, while the anti-hero Raven is meta. Well, we don't know. I mean, I think Raven is going to be great, but like I think Raven is going to catch the same strays as this character, where essentially Raven is going to have to hit as hard as either Rappy, I want to say, or not even harder than Red Hood. Like, you know what I mean? I don't even think she's gonna have. Like, it's gonna be so hard because like Red Hood is just so good for that type of content for her bosses, her where she's type advantage. Red Hood is so good all around that it's very hard to replace her. And then Rappy is just so damn powerful that it's very hard to replace her. And I feel like that was the biggest thing for Eve, that she was going to have a very difficult time trying to make herself work on a team for these bosses where you're taking out Red Hood or Rappy, right? And let me take a look out because I'm curious. I know they put these. I'm gonna read these this time, right? Here, bossing S. Eve is a capable Iron Weak bosser. Although she may struggle to compete against the current top Iron DPS Red Hood Rappy or Rappy Red Hood, she still dishes out amazing amounts of damage, especially compared to the likes of Red Hood, which is what I mean. Like, I think there have been some people who've said their Eve has hit harder than Red Hood, and every time I've showcased Eve versus Red Hood, Eve was very close to Red Hood, considering Red Hood had a lot more investment into her. So I do feel like Eve overall probably does hit harder than Red Hood, based off just all that I said. But at the end of the day, Red Hood still has more to her than just damage. You know what I mean? And so does Eve, but I would say Red Hood has a lot more than what Eve has in terms of what they offer to the battlefield, right? But anyways, who is still remarkable DPS in her advantageous element. However, her like Eve also don't have much impact outside her element. And in Eve's case, it's much worse because two of her important skills become inactive, which is the damage taken and the reload. Right? I think if you're not fighting an iron code enemy or electric code enemy, she does become a bit not too bad. Like, I wouldn't say she becomes so bad because, like I said, I've tried Eve as well outside of just her element type advantage, and she does perform very well. But losing basically a permanent damage taken debuff and then reload like your own bullets, it is quite an L. So I understand why they are putting her in S, because it's like she's competing with two people where they are staples on their team, right? It's going to be the same thing for Raven, where I feel like Raven is probably going to make triple S because of how good she is against enemies with parts. But if we're talking about Raven against just her type advantage stage, she literally has to somehow find a way to replace Red Hood or Rappy on that team, right? Because my thing is, yeah, you're probably going to be able to use her outside of that because she's not limited to just iron code enemies or whatever. But my whole thing is like, I don't see people replacing anybody on Kraken for this character. You know what I mean? You're not replacing Scarlet Black Shadow or Asuka for this character, even though this character's kit seems to be crazy against Kraken, right? I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Their kit seems to be crazy against the Kraken, but I generally don't see anybody replacing Asuka or Scarlet for this character. So we'll have to take a look and see what that's looking like when she comes out. Which Raven comes out in 2 days, right? Raven comes out on Wednesday at Reset. So we're gonna take a look and see what that's looking like, obviously, when that does happen. But other than that, I think the rankings for Eve, I didn't think Eve was going to be good outside of bosses. I never thought she was going to be good in PvP. I tried her in PvE, as you guys seen in my videos. She was never good in PvE. So yeah, I expect her best ranking to be in bosses, and I guess S tier is the highest for her, which, like I said, I don't think it's bad because I do still think this character is like a great DPS, but compared to Red Hood and Rappy, it's very hard to like say, oh yeah, let's put Eve over them, right? That's my personal opinion. My thing is, if you don't have Rappy and you don't have Red Hood, I would say this character is a like crazy must have, because then she becomes the best DPS on your account for Iron. You know what I mean? It's just what it is. But it's your boy Zxous. You guys let me know what you think. If you agree, if you disagree with Pride One, and I'm gonna see you guys next one. I'm out. Peace.